Hello, everyone, and welcome to our fireside today on smart, savvy, and social, democratizing content creation for the next billion. This is presented by Your Story in association with Akamai. Today, we take a deep dive into the latest generation of video first platforms that are shaping India's social media landscape. My name is Madan Mohan Rao from Your Story, and on behalf of all of us at Your Story, welcome to this session. In the past year, millions of people taken to a new breed of social media platforms that are video first and which offer many new ways of creative expression. Such platforms in India are truly democratizing access to social media beyond the tier 1 cities to tier 2 and tier 3 cities as well. To help us understand the current landscape of India's social media platforms in depth, Your Story, in collaboration with Akamai, has presented its highlights in a report called Smart, Savvy, and Social Democratizing Content Creation for the Next Billion. This is available on the Your Story website, and we shall share the link with you a bit later. The report also makes a case for why such platforms are poised to capture a significant market share of India's social media landscape. To know more about this sector, its challenges and opportunities, I have with me a couple of industry experts for today's fireside chat on future proofing social for the next billion users. Our first speaker today is Gaurav Mishra, SVP for Product at ShareChat. Welcome aboard, Gaurav. Gaurav is a proven product leader with over 20 years of experience in the consumer technology space. Prior to ShareChat, Gaurav spearheaded the growth of Uber's AI and data operations and its marketplace platforms. He also co founded Guruji.com, a search engine in regional languages that was later acquired by Flipkart. A true serial entrepreneur. Welcome once again, Gaurav. Joining Gaurav also is Shishikesh Verma, Director for Product Management for Media at Akamai. He's a seasoned technology strategist. He's worked with Akamai Technologies for close to a decade now. He has been helping companies with digital media, online video experiences, and monetization strategies across the regions of Asia Pacific, Europe, Middle East, and Africa markets. Welcome aboard, Rishi. Let's get started now with our discussion. My first question to you, Gaurav, would be tell us a little bit about the backstory. What were the various factors that you think led to the rise of short video social media apps such as ShareChat? Gaurav?
Yeah, so the interesting phenomena in India is that mobile took off. We went mobile first. We bypassed the whole phenomena in terms of setting up like a billion people with landlines. So we went mobile first. So that was sort of like, I think, the first evolution of this story. The next one was like around how video consumption kind of took off in India. India obviously was heavily into television entertainment, and from there the whole medium of video and mobile combined kind of followed suit. And I think the third phenomena is the social media. So the growth of social media was the third catalyst here. So if you combine video, mobile, and social, that is where we land today. And when you look at the landscape and think about like what works when the combination of these three things intersect, it is consumption of videos on mobile phone while you're on the move. And if you like think in those terms, and if you kind of like play out how the Indian consumer kind of consumes content on mobile phone, like it is very obvious that the short video format would be a big hit for the Indian consumer. And we've seen that, right? The video consumption has doubled in the last 2 years. We are already seeing 3.7 billion video views per month. And this phenomena is sort of created this wonderful opportunity, like where short video formats will be consumed more and more by the Indian consumer in India. At ShareChat, we were already sort of well positioned, right? We like if you go back a year from today, we were one of the most sort of successful vernacular platforms. Heavy consumption of of content on WhatsApp was triggered by people finding that content on ShareChat and then consuming it on WhatsApp. So that phenomena was already happening. We were seeing a lot of video being consumed on ShareChat platform itself. And when the opportunity arose where the bans happened and whatnot, and and we saw a clear market gap in terms of a short video platform not existing in India, we quickly turned around, and in 7 days on July 1st, we launched Moj, which is sort of like our short video platform, right? And we've seen spectacular success with that platform launch. We are already kind of doing 80 million monthly active users on that product. We think that we are the leaders in this space. And we are just starting. I mean, so if you look at what we are doing today with that product, it's heavily around entertainment. But we see, like, other categories also growing pretty nicely in terms of do it yourself or other sort of interesting content appearing on the platform. In the last 1 week, like a week ago, we also launched these snap lenses on the platform, which basically allows our creators an opportunity to use very interesting technology to enrich the videos that they create, and really, like, kind of extend their capability in terms of the kind of stories that they can create. So overall, like, we were well positioned before, sort of, like, in the last 3-4 years working on ShareChat, which is our core product, where we were allowing our creators to come to the platform and create this very interesting vernacular content, which could be shared across different social media platforms. And then, like, we saw an opportunity in the short video platform and quickly turned it around. So that's been sort of like the story, which has made this a very interesting opportunity for me to kind of work at this company from Silicon Valley itself. And sort of when I met the founders, it also appealed to my personal journey. I've also been a founder of a search company in India. And when I met the founders and saw, like, their passion and belief in terms of how they can kind of build a super large company here in India, I was on board, and I was super excited to be here. So.
Thanks, Gaurav. That's a very nice convergence of personal and professional trends in the back there. You also mentioned some very interesting numbers. Can you tell us a little bit about how technology has helped you deal with such numbers? It's not just thousands, millions, tens of millions of users you're talking about. How has technology helped you achieve the scale?
Yeah, so technology obviously, like, helps on multiple fronts, right? So right from, like, our ability to host and serve millions of content that is being produced weekly on our platform, to really, like, personalizing that content. Because the challenge when you have such a large amount of user generated content being created on a platform is multifold. Like, I mean, one is obviously in terms of processing these large amounts of videos, making sure that they can be served with low latency, making sure that the video performance is high quality across multiple devices, and, like, different regions with different connectivities and whatnot. So I mean, there is a huge tech problem to be solved on that front. But even bigger problem, or even more significant problem, is making sure that we serve the right content to the right person at the right time, right? And that is a super hard machine learning AI problem. And, like, we at ShareChat are super lucky that we have actually created a data science team from scratch, which is actually building these recommendation engines in-house. And they are sort of one of the key elements here in terms of delivering this super complex problem to millions of users seamlessly every day, every minute of the day. So a combination of scale in terms of handling millions of users in real time, serving millions of video content, and then actually making sure that the right content is being served to the right user. I mean, I can go on talking about it. I mean, there are also interesting complex problems in terms of removing duplicate, making sure that this content is safe for our users. So, like, making sure that we are editing out all of the NSFW content, making sure that there is no abuse on the platform. So there's super hard technology problems that we have to solve. And we are doing it. I mean, this is a great investment story in terms of the tech team that we have built and how they are kind of coming together to solve this exceedingly hard problem every day and every minute.
Thanks, Gaurav. We'll come back to some of those issues of customization a bit later, but let's turn to Rishikesh now. Rishikesh, a lot of challenges come when you try to balance scale with quality. So we're talking about millions and millions of users of companies like ShareChat and so many others. How do you balance that quality versus scale kind of tipping point? What are some of your thoughts on what can be done to match these two? Rishikesh?
Gaurav was talking about this earlier, so that in a place like India as well, it's the scale comes not from 1, 2, 3 cities, right? It is spread across the country. You go from tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. And if you're looking at the next 100 million users, and that's the scale folks like ShareChat look at, it's not your 1, 2, 5, 10 anymore. It's 100, 200, 500 million active users. You want to see how you're able to build for that. And a platform like Akamai, we've been investing for years now. We've been in India for the last, wow, it's almost 15 years that we've been building within India. And we're now there in tier 1 cities, tier 2 cities, tier 3 cities. We work with every operator, cell phone operators, telcos, and so on, to ensure that the infrastructure is there within each of these networks. That helps scale with quality, because when you have to reach someone who is not near a highly connected environment, the closer you are to these users helps performance, helps them load that video quicker, helps as many users connect quicker, helps deliver the same video at a higher resolution, higher fidelity, higher quality. I think that's the biggest differentiator, really. The second one is a lot of the work that goes in tandem with our partners like ShareChat, where we work with them to sort of optimize the entire workflow, decide what sort of video encoding works better, what sort of video protocols work better. Can we pre-fed some of those content? Can we tie in the delivery to the recommendation engine so that, hey, when Rishi is scrolling through his list of recommendations, I don't have to wait for another 2 seconds before the next video loads up. Why? Because it knows that it's the third one in the scroll list in the carousel. So it just makes a request for it already and keeps it ready in the phone. So as I scroll, it just pops up. So there are many such optimizations that we work together with our customers. We work together with our partners to make sure that all of this happens. It's and again, it's not one thing. It's a series of different iterations that we do. It's truly a partnership.
Thanks, Rishikesh. We'll come back to some of those optimization issues a bit later, but let me come back to Gaurav now. Gaurav, in addition to this huge number of users you have in your base, there's also a big diversity factor here. There are very different kinds of consumers coming online now to the internet for the very first time in tier 2 and tier 3 cities. So what are some of the insights you have on maybe different media consumption patterns, media posting patterns in the new user bases in the smaller towns as compared to the bigger cities? Gaurav?
Yeah, so I mean, if you look at the ShareChat story, it starts with the whole super, what I would call creative insight that the young founders had, right? In the initial version of ShareChat, what we found was that we had English as an option, when users were getting onboarded, and 80% of the people chose English as their language of choice. But what we found was that even though they chose English as a language, they were not very comfortable using it. And in one of the sort of successful iterations of the product, we decided to remove English as an option, like when you onboarded users onto the product. And that really kind of jump-started a huge growth opportunity for us. We saw that people just started sharing more, they started creating more content, and it basically, like, the platform just took off, right? And that has been sort of like one of the pivotal success stories of ShareChat. And we are seeing that even now, like, with Moj and ShareChat both, a lot of our user base is in tier 2, tier 3 towns. They love sharing and creating content, whether it is comedy, romance, entertainment, even informational videos in their local languages. And this is proving to be sort of the engine of growth for us. So one of the key things for us is that while we are seeing this phenomenal growth in these markets, we are not limited to these markets, especially for the short video platform. We also see an equal opportunity where even in the tier 1 markets, our product has found a product market fit. And this sort of ability of a platform or a product to unite your audience together into a common pool and be able to serve them better is the key to success of the platform. with this story, I mean, the most important aspect to remember here is that we don't differentiate our users, right? So we are a platform. We basically equally support, like, our consumers, no matter where they're coming from. And the key ingredient here is the ML and the AI technology that we are building, which allows sort of the content created on the platform to be targeted to the right user at the right time. So the tier one English speaking audience on Moj will see that content which they can consume, whereas the tier two, tier three market speakers of native languages will see content in their native languages being served to them. So that's sort of like what is our key insight here. I mean, to summarize, for us, it is about language first approach for ShareChat, which was the key to kind of like, building our core platform, and then video first approach for Moj, which is our sort of like the short video platform. And the core ingredient which powers both these things is a very strong investment in AI and ML tech, which allows us to personalize the right content for the right user at the right time.
Thanks, Gaurav. I think user acquisition, you've clearly pointed out, is a very good strategy for what's happening at your end. What about user retention? What are you doing to make sure that people stay on the platform, deepen their engagement, come back more often, do more things, and so on? You mentioned choice of language, for example. You mentioned AI, ML. How does this translate into different kinds of retention strategies, Gaurav?
Yeah, so the retention tech, I mean, retention is obviously like one of the big things that we worry about, right? And retention has many aspects. One is like, D1 retention, which is more about making sure that our users, as they land and we figure out what they need, the initial few sessions are served to them in the language of their choice with the content that they can connect with. But as we kind of learn more about the user, these next phases in terms of like really personalizing the content and making sure that it is meeting their demographic and their demographic needs in some ways. And all that is kind of powered by the, like, the AI ML engine that we are building. The other aspect, which is very significant for us, is how much attention we pay to the whole, the content ecosystem in itself. So we have a pretty big team that is actually engaging with the creators across, across different languages, across different genres of content, and making sure that there is fresh, interesting content being created by our creators. And I mean, these people are not somebody that are working for us, but we have a very active sort of community exercise where we go and engage with them to figure out what their needs are, what are the ideas that they're working on, and make sure that we have the right tools, we have the right technology to basically make sure that they can create the content that is useful for the audience. And we are also making sure that they're successful on our platform, right? In terms of the followership that they're building, in terms of different ways that we provide for them to engage with people who are consuming their content, right? So really focusing on the creator ecosystem, and the creator becomes a very important element here for us to kind of pay attention to. And so just to summarize, in terms of the retention story, there is a key focus in terms of the day zero problem, making sure that when we know nothing about the user, when he lands, we give them a very good experience, right? Making sure that, like, their language preferences or their language identity is being kind of figured out, whether it is through what they expressed or whether it is through technology, and making sure that the content that they get served is relevant to that, making sure that we personalize as they kind of engage on the platform. And the more and the other sort of like pillar of our investment and technology is in making sure that the creators who are coming on the platform are getting the right technology and the right sort of engagement models for them to create very interesting content for us, right? For them to create contents around trends that are popular, for them to create content around, like, a popular festival that might be coming up, or something that the youth and the community celebrate, and making sure that, like, the content thus created is generating the excitement from our users. So it's a combination of tech, but as well as like really paying attention to the human aspect of it and engaging with the creator community. And these two are sort of like the key to our retention story here.
Thanks, Gaurav. Those are very good tips for our audience on how to go about using these different kinds of retention strategies. Let's turn now to Rishi. Can you tell us a little bit about how our audience can figure out what to choose? Can you talk about what are some of the strategies, the infrastructure choices that are good for content hosting, content sharing platforms? How should people in our audience figure out how to choose the right platform for these kinds of applications? Rishi?
That's a great question because especially when someone's starting out a platform that's bi-directional, right? I mean, traditional infrastructure, broadcasting, internet was all you host content in one place, deliver to a bunch of people, your life is all good. But with social and with user-generated content, a lot of the content is created by the users. So the traffic movement is bi-directional. As much content is created, almost as much as content is consumed. And in a world like that, you would need to have your infrastructure as closest to users as possible, as distributed as possible, because your users are distributed all over the place. Now, some of our customers start in a location, and then they sort of move and expand to a regional and over time to a completely global delivery model. Question is, how are we able to help them upload their content, get it up pretty quickly so that their time to publish is minimized? How are they able to, from the time you hit play, the first frame is played back to you, so your time to playback is minimized. A few years ago, I remember talking about, hey, how everything needs to be under 2 seconds and so on. 2 seconds is very passe in social right now. It's almost instantaneous. And that's the kind of infrastructural choices that you need to make in sense, how am I able to deliver content close to my users? How am I able to store and process content as close to my users as possible? And if I'm not able to store and process my content as close to users as possible, how am I able to move some of these functions, if not the core pieces, some of the functions to the edge so that the user-facing experience is faster? And it's all about engineering the workflow in such a fashion. That's one major thing. The second one, I think is what Gaurav was also touching on, is that it's the tech that has to be embedded into your workflow. Being able to sort of craft your workflow in such a way that if there are gaps, you are able to fill it up by process. Take, for instance, the whole moderation piece. When you have 80 million users uploading content, there's a huge problem of how do you moderate content? How do you ensure that the content Rishi is uploading, the content Madan is uploading is okay to be shown on the platform? So you do need to build an entire ecosystem to help with that. AI and ML are fantastic ways to do it. And most of our customers either build them in-house or use tools available from other public cloud service providers and customize it to what they would like. And the best way to do all of this is to incorporate it in such a way that it's in line with your upload mechanism and in line with your download mechanism. Which sort of brings us to the third segment of it, is when you handle all of this, you need to understand that a lot of the content is going to be very personalized. A lot of the personalizations, the recommendations, the app experience itself is going to be very personalized, which means just caching it and delivering it like any regular CDN or any cache and deliver approach may not always work. You need to have technology that helps with non-cacheable API-like content, where you're able to go back from your client to an origin at a different place and come back at the most optimal route possible in the least possible latency. So that sort of forms the third bucket. And the final one is really around how you secure content, but that's a different topic we should talk about separately.
Thanks, Rishi. You mentioned AI and ML and its importance very much today. And Gaurav, you also mentioned that a couple of times. So Gaurav, my question for you now is, how do you do all this on the fly in real time? You're sensing what's happening, you're interpreting what's happening, you're making decisions about what to do next, and you're delivering all of this in real time. So how does all this come together?
Yeah, I mean, that is the sort of the beauty of the current technology in some ways, right? I guess the short answer is through a lot of hard work, but obviously there is a lot more to it. And
also an honest answer, Gaurav.
But it all starts with really understanding like what our users want, right? So understanding the user is sort of like the beginning of like, how this tech is created. And when I say the user, it's not as simple as like the consumer that is coming there and like, flick, going and scrolling through a stream and consuming the videos. It also means here like the creator who is creating the content, right? Because he's also a equal and a very important participant in the ecosystem. And now there's a whole marketplace element that comes into play, because who is the creator and what content that he created is useful for which audience of which segment, right? So there is then it sort of like suddenly the problem goes from building the right experience for a user to right experience for a creator to this marketplace that is doing this matching on the fly in the most intelligent way possible, so that both the creator and the consumer is getting the value out of their interaction, right? And this is where sort of like the AI ML sort of flywheel kind of comes into play, right? And and uh, and one of the key areas for us in terms of investment is really understanding how we can build the state of the art recommendation algorithms that figure out what is the right, like what is a positive consumer experience when he consumed a video, and what is a negative consumer experience when he kind of scrolled through a video quickly or disliked it, or like, however, so he kind of expressed his displeasure about a video that was shown. And based on these feedbacks that we are collecting in real time, we are actually now generating this very complex graph of understanding which user is liking which content, and then making sure that like, we have identified corresponding users who are similar to this users, and making sure that we are recommending the right content for them. So this becomes an extremely sort of like a complex AI ML recommendation problem that like, that our team is solving with some of the most sophisticated algorithms in the world today. And these algorithms are not just sophisticated in terms of the science and the maths behind it, but it is also sophisticated in terms of the computation capabilities that they need to kind of they need to have, because you're talking about like, billions of views that are happening on the platform, which we are analyzing to figure out which one of them is a positive view and which one of them is a negative view, and making sure that we are understanding the users' preferences over millions of users, right? And once you've understood that, now basically using that learning to make sure that every new user and every new interaction is basically tailored based on this learning that we have done. And all this happening on the fly in near real time, right? And so there is a huge amount of batch processing which you do, where you train your models in the background with billions of data points. But then like the models have to be shrunk and the models have to be deployed so that they can operate in real time, and make sure that like, when the input signals are coming, where the user is, who the user is, what is their previous interaction, we are able to make a quick real-time decision in terms of what video we show them, what is the next video that we show them. And this has to be done across like, millions of videos that have been uploaded on the platform. So this is like one dimension of the problem in terms of making sure that the right user is seeing the right video at the right time. And then like, as Rishikesh was kind of talking about like moderation, because I mean, when you have millions of these videos being uploaded, we have to make sure that all the bad content is being filtered out, right? There are enough what I would call bad actors in the ecosystem who are trying to kind of push what I would call really bad content out there, right? And we are the police that have to make sure that none of that gets in front of our users. And we are actively, paranoidly working to make sure that that doesn't happen. So it's some, in terms of the complexity of the problem, like you have this whole real-time engine that has to work, but then that real-time engine only works because you have like a lot of data that is processed very quickly to make sure that the models are trained, which are deployed, and all of this machinery has to keep working day in and day out. And if anything fails, like, we get right back to work to fixing it, improving it, and you're back at it again. So so that's what keeps us busy. That's what keeps us sort of humming along. And at the end of the day, the real sort of pleasure for us is to make sure that every session and every user interaction gives user the joy and really, like, entertains him enough, and sometimes informs him about, like, a new thing that they might have been unaware of, and brings him back the next day. So that's sort of like, what our goal and purpose here is.
Thanks, Gaurav, for those very hard-earned lessons on how to balance opportunity with risk management. There's bad content makers, bad content out there. There are other kinds of risk also, Rishikesh, and some of these risks are data privacy and security. Can you share with our audience some tips on how should companies be handling data privacy, data security, so that platforms can win the trust of the users? You've worked with dozens of companies across the world. What are your tips on privacy and security, Rishikesh?
Well, let's talk about security first, and then we can come to privacy. There are two slightly different aspects of the same coin. I think the security piece is quite hard and tricky, and to Gaurav's point, I want to take that to start off with. Like, when you have millions of users creating billions of pieces of content that are residing in different parts of the internet, you now have a loosely distributed content lying literally everywhere. And now, let's, for the sake of discussion, imagine the ShareChat team decides that one piece of content is bad and we shouldn't be showing it to users. Now, that content might reside within the origin of where ShareChat has its infrastructure, or as we have delivered it to a few users already, some of it is being cached. You need to have a team and a technology stack that helps you purge, remove, invalidate content across hundreds and thousands of these servers in near real time, and being able to integrate all of this into your workflow becomes super critical. Now, that said, there's also the whole question of what about all the personal data, information about each individual users, my preferences, what has Rishi seen over the last 24 hours, 48 hours. Now, a lot of these social networks and companies like ShareChat, TikTok, they do a fantastic job in terms of ensuring that that data doesn't flow around everywhere. Even as a network that delivers the content, most of this is almost all of this is kept completely secure between the user and your organization. Third parties in the middle, including Akamai, has little to zero visibility of what sort of personalizations are, and that gives us yet another layer of challenge. How do we handle content that we are blind to, yet be able to identify and use most efficiently? So I think that forms the second biggest part, where this content needs to be only protected and should stay within the app's ecosystem and not to any third parties. The third one, which is slightly trickier, is being able to withstand attacks from other third-party bad actors, which is you can take all the precautions to make sure that your content as part of your workflow is quite safe. But how do you ensure that someone doesn't come and break your window and take something from inside? That's where a bunch of security protection mechanisms deployed at various layers can be very effective. Now, one of the things that at Akamai that we see our customers do very successfully is to start putting the security layers right at the edge, where these attacks generally originate from. Nobody attacks an origin from the origin, where it happens very rarely, but it's usually someone sitting in one corner of the world trying to attack something. So if there is a nice and visible shield across all incoming traffic, which can filter in and protect in real time without disrupting the experience that you give to your end users, that becomes a phenomenal way to do it. And videos are easy. What becomes trickier are your APIs, your web application calls, all of that, which go back and forth, because that can look very genuine but be very malicious. And having a robust system which has the smarts and the algorithm to understand heuristically what is bad, what is not good, what is acceptable, and being able to treat them in different ways. There are times where you want to block it out. There are times you don't want to block it out. You only want to throttle it down. You know what? I'll take 10 requests from this person or this IP address. I'll take 10,000 from this IP address, but not more than that. because you might have a bunch of users behind a single IP address. Those are all legitimate scenarios we need to be able to handle out. So that's one way to do it. The last one is around identity management, which is, I think, core to a lot of social networks. And once you start looking at that, in different parts of the world, there are different regulations and rules for handling it. If you go to places in Europe, you have GDPR and compliance. If you come to Singapore, we have something called the PDPA, the Personal Data Protection Act. So there are different data laws in different parts of the world that you will have to comply to once you start going outside of that country or the origin of your services. And you would need to rely and work with third-party partners like Akamai. I'm sure there are plenty of other companies that have identity management services as well as infrastructure services that comply to all of these different rules and regulations that are there in different countries.
Thanks, Hrishikesh, for the good advice for our audience on how to pick a partner who can guarantee data safety and security. We're coming to the last few questions now of our fireside chat today. Let me ask Gaurav a couple of questions now. Gaurav, it is said that content is king in the media world, but you're also in the space of user-generated content. So how do you sort of balance some of these considerations about quality along with random and very diverse user-generated content? What are some of your approaches here?
Yeah, so I mean, this is an extremely challenging problem, and it is a continuously evolving problem, right? We've obviously invested a lot of technology and a lot of operational efforts to make sure that our users are safe in terms of the content that they consume. And as well as from a creator's point of view, that their content is also safe and their creativity is being protected, right? So we pay attention to both sides of the equation when we think about it. And our approach is that we support sort of the freedom of expression, right? So I mean, the users are allowed to come and create content that they want. They're allowed to generate memes and videos and share the content that they think is worthy of sharing and expressing themselves. But then we have checks and balance in place. So right from sort of doing things with pretty sophisticated machine learning models to figure out whether the content is safe from a consumption point of view. And similar to like what Rishi was pointing to, right? I mean, we do it in very nuanced ways, right? So for things which needs to be blocked and thrown out, we do that. But for things which may be on the edge, which may require moderation, we moderate it. We send it to folks who look at the content and basically make a human judgment in terms of whether that can be consumed by users or not. In some cases, we push the content back to the creator with some advice in terms of how they can modify the content for it to be safe for consumption. And from our perspective, we are working with our consumers directly in terms of making sure that the UGC aspect of our ecosystem is growing and is being well invested on. But we also care about what I would call the PGC, the professionals who generate this content, right? Whether it is small publishers, like a small media house in a local language daily in Manipur or Nagaland or a small part of our country, who's generating content which is very interesting in that local language for that audience. We want them to be on our platform too. And we provide them all kinds of support that is required to make them successful on the platform. And part of it is really giving them the customer service, but a part of it is also building the right technology. And that right technology again goes back to our ability to take that content and target it and to the right audience, which can consume that content, right? So it all ties into that, again, two critical aspects of our story here. One is investing in the creator ecosystem, whether it is UGC or PGC, or even small media houses, and making sure that they are engaged and they're active on our platform and getting all the support that they need. And then the other aspect is in terms of building the right technology with AI and ML so that the right content is being picked up and shown to the right user at the right time. We also invest very heavily in terms of in terms of identifying trends and making sure that the content is being tagged correctly, both algorithmically as well as manually. Again, because tagging of the content plays a very critical part in routing the content to the right user at the right time, right? So it's basically thinking very carefully about all these aspects and making sure that we are building the right operational capabilities as well as the right sort of like, the technology investments that go along with it, to make sure that, like, again, the creators as well as the consumers are getting the best possible experience on the platform.
Thanks, Gaurav. I just have to wrap up now with a couple of questions more looking towards the future. As you mentioned earlier, this is a very fast evolving landscape. So what are you doing to future-proof your business? What are you doing to future-proof the experience that customers have on your platform? Gaurav?
Yeah, so the future proofing is all about making sure, expanding, that we keep expanding the themes and the kinds of content that are available on the platform. And this is where I think, if you look at the short video platform in general, I mean, I almost think of it as like, the world discovering email and the world discovering, like, streaming content, and it's almost like a new medium, right? Which the consumers discovered today, that in a short video now they can consume entertainment and information in a packaged way, which is very meaningful to them, right? And this sort of constraint of time creates, and it brings out a lot of creativity from the creator ecosystem, and this basically delivers the message to the consumer, right? So there is this whole aspect that is being kind of recognized by both the creators and the consumers right now. And the evolutionary aspect of it is that now brands and different companies that are still not active on these platforms and in these sort of what I would call medium, will become more and more active, right? So it will go from where a lot of the content being consumed is mostly around entertainment, to where it will become more informational, educational, identifying opportunities around you, to commerce also, right? I mean, we are seeing this phenomena that at least in some of the Asian countries today, a farmer sitting in a remote part of a country can actually create a short video platform showing how lovely his apples are or bananas are, and consuming directly with the consumer, right? And creating a demand for his product. And these kind of opportunities where the producer eliminates all the middlemen and can kind of directly connect with the consumer, because the format is something that he can create and innovate on and get a wide reach, right? And the right reach. So there is a wide reach, but it's also the right reach. And now suddenly there is like, commerce opportunities that open up on the platform. I mean, obviously some of that will happen in the future, but I see this as sort of like the start of this journey of, like, amazing experiences for the consumer, amazing experience for the creator, but eventually leading to amazing experiences in terms of the commerce that happens on this platform.
Thanks, Gaurav. Those are some very exciting insights you shared about the future and why the future looks so bright. Let's turn now to Rishikesh. Rishikesh, from your opinion, what are some must-have critical success factors for people in our audience who want to get into this space or survive and scale in this space? What would you say they must have to be in this space? Rishikesh?
I'll break that down into three buckets. And the first one is very close to what Gaurav was talking about, is how are you able to monetize the ecosystem? The aspects of bringing e-commerce into this is already happening. Social selling is here to stay. Everybody is already starting to do it. The question is, how is it going to permeate into everybody's lives? So your ability to monetize and having a monetization strategy is going to be critical to your success. The second, of course, is your ability to attract, retain audiences, creators. And you would only be able to do that if you're able to create a seamless experience when you do it. And that experience is not just in your process and just the product itself, but also the technology that powers it, and how the entire user experience is. That becomes your second pillar. The third, and I think the larger and the more challenging one, is really to find a niche, because this is a market that everybody is trying to break into. It's a market that has some really big players already with hundreds of millions of users, tens of millions of users. So if you are running your social company and you want to crack it, what is the niche that you want to create? What is the area that you want to focus on? What is that differentiator that you're going to give your consumers or your creators? I think that's one really important thing that you need to think about. So those are the three things that I would sort of leave out there.
Thanks, Rishi. Thanks, Gaurav, for your insights. I hope you and the audience have enjoyed our chat between the three of us. We are all in 3 different time zones. It's a testimony to the power of technology to deliver this kind of an experience. I should once again remind people in the audience that Your Story and Akamai have collaborated on a report called Smart, Savvy and Social, Democratizing Content Creation for the Next Billion. Details will be on the Your Story website and in the chat window a bit later. But once again, thanks to our speakers for sharing with us some of the key insights on the 3 P's of this business: platform, personalization, and performance. Platform is the future. We're living in a platform era now. Number 2, personalization. You have to personalize for the diverse set of users in India and the whole world. And last but not least, none of this will work unless you have performance, high scale performance at scale across diverse kinds of users. Thank you all so much. Have a fantastic rest of the day, and I shall see you all in our next session. Have a good day. Thank you. Thanks, Rishikesh. Bye.